Chesdin, welcome to the Lead, Learn, Grow podcast.
Thanks, Robin. Thanks for having me. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, good to have you on. And it's been a minute since I've seen you. In fact, I think the last time I saw you, you were wearing knickers and high socks, and it was probably on a baseball field somewhere, God knows where.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, it's been a long time, but yeah, baseball been I guess outside of my life for a couple of years. I'm sure we'll talk to a little bit more, but glad I got to know you and a lot of the others through the program that we got to compete with.
Yeah, awesome. Well, before we jump in, so tell folks a little bit about who you are and a little bit about your journey. What you're doing now. Introduce yourself to folks.
Yeah, totally. So from the Virginia area, Richmond, Virginia, is born and bred. Ended up, spending my college career at the University of Virginia. So always wanted to go to UVA. Didn't know if it was going to be possible. Thought like probably wasn't going to be possible. Was a pretty good student, but it wasn't that tier of a student. And I was a pretty good baseball player, but didn't know if I was necessarily that capable either. But found a great prep program, Virginia Cardinals, that put me in a good situation to make dreams happen. And then ended up matriculating to Charlottesville in 2015. Kind of had a very up and down career, had a very unsuccessful freshman year that made me learn a lot and like really challenged me in a lot of ways. Helped me kind of like rebound my second year, come back and be like a critical part of my college team's bullpen that year. And then from there, kind of college went up and down with some injuries, some successful outings, some very unsuccessful outings. And ultimately kind of like put a bow on it with COVID ending my college career. And then entered the working world through a rotation program. I work at Capital One currently. I've been there for the past 3.5 years, started July 2020, and takes me to where I'm at now. And I right now live in Arlington, Virginia. So just enjoying life, trying to learn what I can and apply a lot of like life's lessons to what I do daily.
What's your role at Capital One? What part of the business you work in?
Yep. Currently, I'm a product manager, so a digital product manager, and work with software engineers in the business to build digital products to service customers. So I'm in our card business, which is Capital One's largest like spectrum or aspect of the business, and work in like our servicing strategy. So work with analysts and people to try and figure out what are the customer experiences we want to build to better increase the customer experience perspective, but also to help with some of our operational expenses. And from a dollars and cents side of the house. So that's where I sit right now.
Have you met Jennifer Garner?
I have not met Jennifer Garner. We spent so much money, or have to. I don't know if I actually have any idea how much we spend, but we have to spend so much money on marketing. I think that would be really cool to do at some point. One thing that I really value and I have valued about Capital One, my experience, I joined a rotation program. So I've been here for 3.5 years. Last August, I took the role that I'm in now. And I had just hit 2 years and I was in my third role. So I got to kind of jump around and see different things. So I was in cybersecurity for a year. I have a media studies degree. Didn't think I was going to work at a bank or work in cyber or tech. So spent a year in cyber, then kind of switched over to product on the tech side, worked in a different organization, and then now landed where I'm at now. So haven't met Jennifer Garner, but I think that is possibly, or like any of the celebrities, I think that's possibly, like Taylor Swift would be an awesome one too. I think that's possible with the rotation aspect and like being able to see stuff. Like that's a big thing in Capital One is internal mobility. And it's given me the opportunity to like find what's out there and things I don't really like and I don't want to do, and things I'm like, hey, I'm really passionate about that right now. Yeah. And I'm sure, as my career progresses, I'll find other things I'm passionate about too.
Yeah, well, very good. That sounds really good too. A great way to start your career, to bounce around and get a sense of where you fit and what gets you excited. That's really good. So let me take you back to college a little bit. Did you have anxiety about what in the world am I going to do? Like, oh my gosh, I got to take care of myself now. I'm really out of the nest. And there's a million things I could do. I've got lots of friends, and obviously you probably had a really great network from playing baseball at UVA and lots of people that you knew. But how did you go through the process of sort of figuring out what it is you wanted to do for your career?
Yeah, honestly, Robin, it changed a lot in college. I went into school and like you mentioned anxiety, like I was really confident going in. Like I was a little bit nervous. Like, at that point, the program had just won a national championship. I got to school and enrolled in school 2 weeks after they won their first national championship in program history. So a little bit nervous for like shoes to fill, but I was so confident in like the high school season I had and like coming in, like knew that I could be a contributor. But like I mentioned before, like kind of got punched in the gut like pretty early from a school perspective, like wasn't really successful. Baseball was like, I didn't really know where the ball was going. I was a control pitcher and I had no idea where I was throwing the ball. So I got challenged pretty early and had to work through some of those things and didn't handle it well at some points in my career, and especially early on, and then handled those things when those things came up again later, handled them a lot better as my career went on. So went into school like wanting to play professional baseball as most athletes do when they want to play at their sport at the highest level. Unfortunately, baseball has an avenue to do that professionally. So that was my plan. But then after that first season, and it just didn't go how anyone was really expecting or how I was expecting, I had to kind of keep options open. And from there, I was like, I can't just, all I did was baseball and school my first year and didn't do either one well. Let me try and see what's out here to like kind of expand my horizon. So I joined some like clubs and organizations in school and found one student athlete advisory committee, or called SAC, that I was very involved in, and ended up being really involved in throughout my career. But that pushed me into like working with administration a little bit, or athletic administration, say like, okay, like how can we really at a core, like really how can we improve like athletic experiences for student athletes? But you get to work with administration to kind of achieve those goals and try and like figure out what's a compromise or like a path forward to kind of get there. Administration maybe has some ideas that have constraints with dollars and cents or things like that, but athletes have needs and they have requests that they want. And if you can like kind of bridge the gap from your team as a representative to the administration, you can play well there. So I wanted to be an athletic director for a period of time. Through my involvement there, like I was wanted to be an athletic director at a Power 5 school. Through kind of continued exploration in college, which college was great for, and UVA was great for me. I ended up kind of wanting to go like a business path and do something, sales was something that I was really interested in. People say, I think you'd be great at this. Like you have a great work ethic. I think you'd excel in sales. So that was my path for a little bit, and then ended up like late deciding to come back for a fifth year, and exercise my last year of eligibility. And then found rotation program at Capital One, where it was like you get to basically do 2 jobs in 2 years. At that point, I thought I knew what I wanted to do, but I wasn't really sure. So let me just go jump into something where I'm going to get 2 jobs, figure out 2 things that the worst case scenario is I find 2 things that I hate. Best case, I find 2 things that I love, and I have to kind of decide between them. And so it varied between like meeting people, understanding what they did, like talking to alums. Like UVA has a great alumni network. The baseball program also has a great alumni network, and trying to figure out what people do. And then, kind of went from here to here to here to here and trying to figure out like what I wanted to start my career doing. And then just once I grabbed something, I kind of jumped into it and took me to where I'm at now. So, happy to answer, I guess, more detail on any of those points, but
yeah, no, that's good. What's been the thing, Chesdin, that has most surprised you about, because look, for a little context for the listeners, what you were doing for 5 years in Charlottesville, it seems on the outside looking in very glamorous, right? It seems like, oh my gosh, if I could have that experience, and and it's really, really hard. And there's a lot of pressure, and people, I think, don't understand that, every time you as a pitcher, every time you go out, there's a lot of pressure. You're trying to, get another opportunity. You're trying to keep scholarship. Like there's a lot on the line, and the work is hard, and it's not, it's not glamorous really once the shininess, most folks would say, once that wears off. And so now you get into the work world, and it's different. What surprised you the most about just being out in the corporate setting?
Yeah, that's a really great question. I think I'll talk about something kind of internal to me, is I always felt like when sports ended for me, I was going to lose like a big part of me. And to a degree, like that's held true. Like it was really tough when COVID started, and just like, I knew it was coming at either at the end of that season, or maybe I got a chance to play professionally for 1 season. That was probably going to be it. So I knew it was like within the next 12 months, that was probably it. I was going to hang the spikes up, but I didn't think it was going to be like that day. So that was tough. And I knew that took a piece away from me, but I also, feel like I was able to kind of like find another like piece of me to like create a bigger identity, I guess. So I think that was surprising in the senses where like I was leaving something from like baseball or like something in the past. I think with anything that you do, like if you love it, like you don't want it to end, and everything, seemingly comes to an end at some point. But I was able to kind of grab something and bring that to my career. And it took me some time to figure out what that was. But I think a lot of the things that you develop and skills you develop within athletics or, college and doing different things and trying different experiences out. I was able to apply like my work ethic like very, very closely, which I didn't ever think was like not going to play, but it has kind of surprised me at how much like my raw curiosity and like ability to just like put my head down and try something new has played well here. Going to work at a bank, I really thought I was going to have some sort of finance background. And then Capital One being so forward leaning in tech, I thought I was going to have some sort of technology background. I have had zero of them, like still to a degree. I guess 3 years later, I have a little bit more. So probably not giving myself enough credit, but I didn't have any of that going in. And my ability to just like say like, hey, I have no idea what any of this is, or like, I'm curious about this. I'm going to go ask somebody, or, hey, what do you do? Like, I'm in cybersecurity and I have a media studies degree. Like, how'd you end up as like VP of X? So I think that the curiosity and like ability to just like go out and see things, I think plays a lot better, I guess, in the setting that I'm in than I was expecting to. I would have expected to be like really like hardcore cutthroat. Like you need to know the dollars and cents of everything to be able to like run all these equations. And largely like I've had to do some of that, but I haven't had to do it as much, I guess, to the degree. And then to the degree that I need to learn something, there's people there to support. You just have to be like willing to like ask and stuff. And I've always been a generally like curious person, especially things that like, interesting to me, like want to know more about, I don't know. If I feel like I have a gap, I want to kind of try and close that gap. So I think that's been something that has ended up like playing really well for me. As a kid, you're very curious about a lot of things. You ask a ton of questions. If you can continue that and carry that curiosity kind of into the rest of your life, I think in a lot of scenarios, it can play really well for you.
Yeah. I want to talk to you about this whole identity thing, because so the obvious connection is, someone like yourself who, identifies as an athlete. So I'm a baseball player, I'm a basketball player, I'm a soccer player, whatever it is. And I think to the degree that people can understand that, who they are is not what they do. I think there's a lot of people struggle, I think, because if who I am is what I do, when I stop doing that, then who am I, right? And so I think a lot of athletes and even folks who, like in sales, so if I identify as, my core identity is a successful business person or a successful salesperson, well, if I have a bad year, then suddenly I lose my confidence, I lose my edge. And I think it's really important that we separate our role from our identity. And it sounds like you were maybe a little more intentional about that. At what point do you think you started to lean into the idea that I am more than Chesdin Harrington baseball player?
Yeah, I think in a lot of ways I was forced to start thinking that way in my first year, because I like I said, struggled with everything that was kind of put in front of me, and to say struggled to a degree that I had never struggled before, like could do school with minimal effort and still get good grades or get good enough grades. I'd say like an A like high B student. That was a different ballgame. College was, UVA was a lot different than Patrick Henry High School in a lot of ways. So that like challenged me really quickly. And then baseball wise, like was typically on like the better end of where I like the people I was playing with and where I was coming from, which was a great thing. And there were still people that were a lot better than me and like who I got to play with every day and like compete with in the travel circuit and like even on my home teams and things like that. But it was just completely different, ball game when I got to school. So I think I was forced into it in a sense of like, you're struggling with a lot of these things. Like if you're going to hold on to that being your identity, it's not going to be like easy going for you. You have to find some other things that you're passionate about or interested about or curious about to kind of go in and try and see what else you can kind of have to build a fuller picture. That, really at the time, like admittedly that first year, like I was Chesdin, the baseball player that, was a student at UVA and liked to volunteer like here and there when I could. And like the more buckets I could kind of like put my hand in, like experience, whether it was a little bit or if I went really deep into it, that made a bigger picture of like what I could be or like potentially like be interested in. And then that filled out like my college experience, I categorize as being like a very full experience. And I don't think I would have been on that path and I would probably love to have a more successful baseball career and be pitching in the big leagues or something like that. But I don't think I would have had the full college experience and like all these different things that kind of like pulled me in different directions if I hadn't struggled so much that first year, and still had a decent career, like had, years where I was great and then had years where I was not so great too. So I think that those aspects kind of like pulled together. I was really nudged into trying to like fulfill and like I guess get outside of like my comfort zone of just like that being like my core being and try and figure out what else was out there. And I think I was really forced into it. So I'd say probably at the end of my first year, I go into my exit meeting expecting that like I'd probably get some like bad feedback or like potentially like, hey, like we don't know if you can cut it here. And really got like an invote of like confidence from my my head coach, Brian O'Connor. He said, like, we know you can compete here. You just have to believe in yourself and do it. Like that put so much confidence back in me where an hour before that meeting, I would have been like, I don't think I can cut it at this level. And then I was able to go to summer ball and just say like, let me just go play baseball. Like I've done this before. I know how to do it. And then kind of got that confidence back. But I knew in the back of my mind, like anytime I could slip back into this other area. And so let me kind of figure out what, makes me, happy and gives me a lot of like opportunities to kind of like see what's available outside of just this baseball track.
Yeah. If you could go back, in college and change anything, not talking about on the field stuff, but, as it relates to your life now, is there anything you would have, sought out or learned about or been more intentional about?
I think the biggest thing, and I am glad I did it at one point, and so this might not be the best answer for the question you're getting at, but I think what I regret or like wish I had done more of was sooner, and doing like meeting with people or getting to know people outside of like my specific area. I knew the baseball team very well. I knew a lot of the other athletes very well. I didn't really know that many other students. There's 20 some thousand students that go to UVA that by the end of my college career, I knew a lot of them or my core group and knew them well. And they were passionate in very different things than I was passionate in, but the passion that they had, or like the exceptional like attitude that they had about things, or the great work that they were doing was, again, different than what I was doing, but the passion that they had for that like really, really resonated with me. And I just loved seeing people like going after things and like working towards something that they loved. And I really didn't do that until probably like the spring of my third year. So I'm always think back as like, what else could I have grabbed if I had really focused on this for 2.5 years prior? And I think to a degree, it wouldn't have probably been beneficial for me to do that in probably the first semester or the first like semester and a half, because there was so many other things that like, it just would have been extremely like overwhelming and I was already overwhelmed. It would have kind of grabbed me beyond that. But like, I didn't connect that much with my like first year, like hallmates. Like I have friends that they're going to their weddings and they're in each other's weddings and stuff like that. It would have been nice if I could have like invested in that a little bit more, been more intentional about that, as I was the back end of my career of like, I'm going to be out late tonight because I want to have this like college experience and like go hang out on the lawn late at night with one of my friends' lawn rooms, or go to my friend's like honor council meeting just to show support and kind of like learn about the honor committee. Those things I didn't do, or like didn't even like realize they were available, or would have been like, yeah, I'm not doing that early in my career, that I did late in my career, that I think really like contributed to that like full college experience and fulfilling that. If I had done a little bit sooner, I think I'd probably have a couple more experiences to kind of draw back on, which I give so much credit to like the back end of my career for having those.
Yeah, and that's really good advice. I mean, there's a lot of parents listening to this, and a lot of parents in today's world, whether it's volleyball or soccer, like pick a sport, but it's all about, are you all in, and the kids got to work, and the kids got to, the grind and all that. And it really, I don't think you see it until you reflect backwards and you realize that, boy, that's a very dangerous path to take. Like putting all of your desires and your ambitions and your talents into one bucket, whatever that bucket is. the odds of that being the right bucket are probably smaller. And I think I love what you said. You get out of your comfort zone, you meet different people, you have different experiences, and you're learning now in the business world. So much of success is about your own personal network. And the day you start with the mindset of contributing to others and being other people focused and nudging yourself out of your comfort zone is the day you really start to grow a career. So I think I really appreciate what you said there. I think folks can really lean into that. Let me ask you this, Chesdin. What have you done since college in an intentional way? As I said before we started recording, it seems like you've been intentional about building your career. And I feel like, we won't get into it today, but I feel like you know what you're after. And you've got something out there that's identified, maybe if it even isn't expressed. But what have you done to intentionally establish success, be a winner in the business world to this point?
Yeah, I'd say probably a couple of things. So I think to a degree, like I have, some ambitions or things that I'm after, but I'm also still figuring it out. And that's something people ask, like, where you're at right now. Do you see yourself doing it for a little while? I'm like, yeah, I think that's where I want to spend right now. But 6 months from now, a year from now, something could pop up and be like, that sounds awesome. Like, I actually want to try that. And I wouldn't have many reservations about probably like changing path or course and exploring that a little bit to a degree. But I think a couple of things. So I think the curiosity angle that I mentioned before, like that has been something that's given me opportunity. And like COVID, I think gave me an opportunity and stuff too. And working remotely has given me some opportunities to kind of explore some other things. So in addition to exploring at work and being in a rotation program and trying different things, I've actually I've taken like part-time jobs in the past couple of years. I worked at an Amazon warehouse during COVID. I didn't need to work there. Like I was, making, fine salary and stuff like that at my full-time job. But I was like, I don't know anything about supply chain. This is like a huge thing right now. Like supply chain shut down during COVID for a period of time. Now it's like kind of coming back. Like we're still working through some things. People aren't really leaving the house. I was like, I want to go learn how a package gets to your house in like a day. Like that sounds really cool. So I made, the $15 an hour I had to work late at night. So I'd start at 7 o'clock and work till midnight, 4 days a week. My Fridays and Saturdays were gone for a period of time. 2 of the days during the week, I would log off work and go. So that was an area. It was like, I want to learn about that. And I did it for a period of time, and like probably not sustainable to continue to do throughout my careers, work 2 jobs, but it was like, that's what I wanted to learn then. The next year I decided to take a retail job. I was like, okay, I saw it from like a supply chain standpoint, like how it kind of goes to the warehouse. Like I want to kind of work with consumers or like be direct with them. And this company that had like a very, very strong brand that I'd never been a customer of, but like people just raved about their product and raved about the experience they had there. And working in product management, where like that, we're trying to deliver great customer experiences. I was like, I kind of want to see product in a sense from a different angle. So I started working at a retail store called Lululemon in Richmond 2 years ago. And that gave me an opportunity to kind of explore and like day to day, like I'm working remotely all day, and they'll let me go out and like actually engage with people and try and figure out like, how do they kill this brand? Like what is so great about their product and how like people end up coming back. So I think those 2 experiences, like from a curiosity standpoint, and like trying to like build, like, again, those won't be things I'll probably be able to do like part-time jobs or gigs, like do the rest of my career, like probably nor would I want to, but it gave me an opportunity to like go in and explore and like do that, to not impede anything with my day-to-day job, or like really to a social standpoint, like still was able to kind of uphold like what I wanted to do from that standpoint, but I was able to go explore something else. I think the other piece of like on the working side, like my full-time job, and I think has played really well and has given me opportunities in a sense, is you mentioned like being available and like knowing people, getting to network and being like in someone's corner. I think in the product management role, like you have to be a very, you're the lead person on the team. If your team delivers on something, you probably aren't getting like a ton of the credit. Like it's probably the engineers that are building it. But if your team doesn't deliver on something, it's your fault. And so that's a lot of responsibility. But if you are like in the fight with your team every day, and the engineers that you work with and the business people that you work with and everything, and they know that like Chesdin has my back and will like stand on a table to advocate for me or protect my team, like those things can do really well. And I didn't necessarily know all those like intricacies when I first started in the role. But as my career is kind of like built out, like that's another area where I think like I'm probably not the most like tech savvy, business savvy like person out there. Like I would like, no, I'm not. I'm competent enough to do a good job, but I think those other aspects of like leadership and teamwork and things that I've learned from sport and other experiences really have like contributed to me like having a small degree of success at this point in my career. And I think we'll continue to like play well in what I try and have somebody that's working with me kind of indirectly now in a more junior level and try and coach that individual to try and like uphold some of these things, which she has probably a much better skill set that she's coming in with. But if she can kind of like piece together some of the places that I've really found success, I think she could, continue to build out her tool set. So very long winded, but I think those are two aspects.
No, that's fantastic. So so a lot of people talk about, I'm a learner and I'm curious, but the idea that you went out and worked these little gig jobs in retail and at Amazon, like what did you learn? Not necessarily about supply chain and the sort of the business side of it, but what did you learn by working at Amazon? Either about the business or about yourself? Like, what was your takeaway from a stint unloading packages at Amazon?
Yeah, a range of stuff. So I think the supply chain is an obvious one too. But I could like go beyond like I guess the scope of what, like if I wanted to work for something, I wanted to figure something out that was available. So I wanted to at the time I was learning about and working in cyber, like I did that for my period, like my day job, and even probably some extended hours most of the time. But I was able to kind of get outside of that and go and try something different. And also, I think you end up like working with people like different scenarios you put yourself in, you get to work with different people that have different things. So like that was a part-time thing for me where I was working 20 or so hours a week. There was other people like that was their full-time job where to provide for their family, they had to work 60 some plus hours a week. And they were on my shift. I'd never met them before. They were picking up a shift and they were getting ready to instead of getting off at 12, they were going to continue to work till 6 a.m. or something like that. So I think the experience that you kind of see, like everybody within society has a role that they play, and they're playing that role for themselves or their family, whoever they're supporting. It gave me an opportunity to kind of like see things from a different lens of while I was sitting in front of a desk every day, like the people that were getting a package to me, like there were so many aspects of that had to go right, and so many people that have to be involved in that to get there too. So I think those are probably like two of the key areas, I think. As far as like organization of like the warehouse and stuff like that, just the massive scale that they have is one warehouse of however many that they have across the globe. And just kind of being a small portion of like, when I scan this package, it's going to be received somewhere from a technology perspective, and then it's going to go here. And I think that just like logistics side of things was really informative.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And what a great takeaway to just at a young age. I mean, look, being a student athlete at, one of the top universities in the country, you certainly can get a skewed perspective of life. And even though, you're Patrick Henry and, rural and all that, I mean, you've spent a lot of your time, in an elite institution doing elite things. And what a great lesson at that point in your life to develop a sense of empathy about, wow, I'm doing this for the learning and for the sort of the kicks of doing it. And here's someone that's, taking extra hours and feeding their family. And what a great, that's a great experience. And kudos to you for taking the initiative to do some of these things. I hope you keep doing that. That's, I don't know that you have to sign up and work there, but I mean, you can do these deep dive immersions on certain topics and, really start building out your skill set. And that's really good. All right. So let me shift gears for a second. I want to ask you about your own self-leadership, right? So as you think about leading yourself and you think about continuing to grow and to learn, I'm curious, like, what kind of content are you a reader? Do you have favorite podcasts? Like, how do you continue to grow yourself now that formal education is over? What does self-education look like for you, Chesdin?
Yeah, it varies. You mentioned something that's like near and dear to me, podcasts. I can't claim that all of them are like educational. A lot of them are like humor, just like something to kind of pass the time as I'm walking to the gym or I'm working out. Spotify is my choice for music or podcasts. My Wrapped came out, and I last year I broke 40,000 minutes. This year I broke 50,000, and there was like 99% of them were podcast minutes. Like that's all I listened to. And again, it's a range of stuff. So I have a bunch that I listen to, but I think that is a great avenue for me, is like popping on something that's like 3 minutes long, 10 minutes long, 3 hours long. It can kind of vary between what I end up listening to, but as an aspect of, I'm not like that tapped into like I feel like that, not that tapped into like politics or like the broader like business scale or like world like things that are going on, that gives me an avenue to get something from it. So I'm not like reading the newspaper every day, or I'm not reading like a ton of news articles and stuff, but I'm getting a degree or like snippets, I think, from that experience and kind of listening to those. So that's a huge thing for me. I also, through my employer, like we have an opportunity to like, we have access to a lot of different things to continue education, either through a university. So we have, a benefit available for us to be reimbursed for classes and stuff like that, which I've used to this point, just taking like an intro to business class a couple years ago. We also have ones that like, if I'm in the technology space, like that gives me an opportunity to like learn about Amazon Web Services or AWS that we leverage, and other things where we have like licenses where you can go into these different sites like Coursera or Udemy, LinkedIn Learning, that give you kind of access to options to be able to do self-paced learning. We also have internal like instructor-led courses that are like specific to our domain at my employer too. And that I've engaged with a lot of those. Some of those can be like very, very helpful from like, I need it today, and like I learned from that and I can immediately apply it. Some of it is like sets the table, is like, okay, I learned a little bit about it now. 6 months from now, I might actually need to revisit this course because what I learned then, like I didn't know anything about, and then now I've had some experience to apply it. Let me go back to it. So I'm pretty intentional about like trying to, when something comes up, I see an opportunity, like a class, at Capital One, we have fraud is like a big thing within banking and credit cards. Like I don't know anything about card fraud, but I get to take an all-day class about that and like learn about like what we're doing at the company and what like the broader landscape looks like. Like I'll engage in those opportunities as much as I'm able and still uphold like the responsibilities of my role. So I'm always, if there's something that pops up, I'm always interested in looking into it. So if you have podcast recommendations or course recommendations or anything like that, like granted I can fit them into my schedule and stuff like that, it's always important to me to kind of look into.
Yeah, good. So as we start winding down, let me ask you this. Should young people should this is maybe more for the moms and dads that are listening, but should young people play sports, and what's the upside and what's the downside? And I'm thinking about, 12, 13, 14, 15-year-old. What are some of the upsides to doing that? Is it beneficial? Has it been beneficial to you? And what are some of the things that maybe you didn't know way back then that you know now that, might have made a difference? So let me hear you riff on that for a second. I'm curious what you would say.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, from my experience, like definitely, I love sports. So watching it now and like continue to that be a smaller part of my life, but a part of my life still to a degree. Like I couldn't have seen myself not growing up playing sports, and not just playing sports, but playing like all of them. Like I played basketball, football, baseball, obviously, like other things. I just played like whatever was out there, soccer when I was younger. And then as my career kind of like continued on, or like as I got a little bit older, like continued to play a lot of the sports. And then my senior year of high school, I ended up playing baseball. And like one of the things I hate is that I ended up playing football in my last year of high school. And there were some reasons for that that ended up kind of like coming into play, unfortunately. But I didn't play my last year of high school football. I didn't play my my sophomore through senior year of high school basketball. And those are things that like at the time, like made sense. For some reason I was able to work a job, like didn't have to go through some of the aspects of like maybe getting hurt or something like that. But there's also other aspects, like those were like great experiences. Like I could look back on it, I don't get them back. Like I'm not going to be able to join the high school basketball team or go out on Friday nights and play a football game after this is over. I think those are some of the aspects that like, one, from the experience and like love of the game, that is like far and away a big thing. But also you have to like be able to manage your time well. You have to be able to like work well with a team. You have to, give into, unless you play an individual sport, and probably to a degree still there, like you have to be a great teammate and continue to contribute to the betterment of the entire group around you. So I think there's some very great skills that you learn that I learned both in high school and middle school, elementary school, like all the way up through college, that I've continued on throughout my career. I think that's one. I think the drawback that I would see, and I think they're few and far between, is that it's a commitment. So you're trading off other things. So one of my bigger regrets, and it maybe sound a little bit silly now, but like it probably wasn't to this person. Like one of my best friends invited me to a dance, like a Sadie Hawkins dance in high school. And I didn't go. I said yes, but then I didn't actually go to the dance, went, took pictures, and went to baseball practice because I felt like I needed to throw a bullpen that day. I had all day. I could have I could have got around it, but I made the trade off then. Like I kind of was blinded to like how that could potentially impact somebody else, and like what I like probably should have prioritized at the time. Like I could have gotten around that situation and gone and done my bullpen 10 hours before that and then gone to the dance later. So I think that's like one small piece, but there's other things that you potentially have to give up, like because of the commitment that I had in baseball in school. Like I would walk by the corner at UVA when people were at the bars, and like this is kind of another silly thing, but they were having a beer at like 2 o'clock in the afternoon. I was like, I'll never be able to do that because I'm going to baseball practice. I'd rather go to baseball practice, but I didn't have some of the experience that some of the normal students had. And so I think continue, like as you have a commitment to a sport, like you end up having to make trade-offs, and you just have to balance whether like, is that the trade-off that you want to make? And for me, it was like unequivocally yes all the time. But there were some aspects like I just didn't get to do certain things, and that's just a part of life.
So then what is it that you think you take into your career now that gives you an advantage, right? So what's the obvious ones are, it requires commitment and goal setting and all that. But I mean, what do you think those experiences have meant to you? Because I mean, let's face it. I mean, you're a nice young man, so you're not going to say it out loud, but you're competing with people. And, for folks who want to move up internally, there's that one next chair, and there's probably 30 people who want it. And some of them, and a lot of them you don't know. And it's competitive if you want it to be. And most folks who are ambitious, they do want it to be competitive. And what are some things that you've brought with you that you think maybe give you an edge, or maybe you don't have all the technical skills and you didn't study business, but yet you've got some things? Like what are some of those things?
Yeah, I think the competitive nature is a big one, and that can be really beneficial. And it can also be a drawback at some points where like you maybe are getting to a point where like you're being confrontational to a degree, or like you don't know if something's going to quite go your way. Like you have to really be mindful of it because it could slip up, and it could come up in a non-positive light. Although the most of the time, like that plays well is like putting my head down, getting good work done. I think that's a big one. I think the teamwork aspect as well, and like mentioning before about like advocating for people. What plays really well, and like there's certain organizations and certain companies, different teams that things play up and like culture plays up. It's like I consider myself a culture carrier, someone that like can inject myself into organization, like be positive. And so although like I might be competing with other people, like I'm consistently celebrating other people for the good work that they do, because I know at some point like one, it's just I think it's the right thing to do, but two, it in a selfish manner, if I can categorize it that way, at some point it's going to come back my direction where like I'm going to need that person that I've like celebrated consistently to have my back, either with some work I need them to do something for me, or like I need them to shout me out or something like that. Like it all comes back around, where if you're the person that's like consistently positive and shouting out people out, not to a degree where it's like disingenuine, but if it's genuine like celebration and praise, I think those things like really can do well for an organization like team morale, that have like really, really, I think, contributed to some of my success to this point. Whereas it's not like I want people to give me a shout out, or I want people to like be in my corner, but I'm not in anybody else's. Like I think those are the things that are important, and you go get that from sport, and like teamwork and like contributing it to like the team coming together for a bigger goal. But if you have that kind of at the forefront, and you have your like competitive nature, like work ethic, at the forefront. I think that kind of like trio, along with probably plenty of other things, contribute really, really well, and has played well for me in my career to this point. And hopefully will continue on as where I go from here.
Well, Chesdin, I think you're going to be just fine, young man. I think you're on the right track. I love some of the stuff you talked about, and just you've got this earnestness about you that is I won't say it's rare, but you know, it's everyone doesn't bring that to the table, the curiosity, just the genuineness of wanting to do a good job. So thanks for coming on. I think folks are going to have a lot of takeaways with this, and it's good seeing you again.
Yeah, great. Thanks for having me. Really enjoyed talking with you, and hope we get to talk a bit more.
Okay. Let me know if I can do anything for you, Chesdin. We'll see you.
Thank you.